The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. We got the man, Sesk, in Sydney, man. How you doing?
Good, bro. Yourself?
Very good, very good. Thank you for taking the time to make it to the studio and shoot the interview, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Now, me personally, I think the first time I heard your name was the joint Trap Talk, Trap Runners. Yep. And I was a bit late. I can't remember when that dropped, but I reckon I only heard that like 4 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
But when did that song drop?
Fuck. Now you got me. That would be, at least maybe 5 years ago. I think off the top. I'm not 100% sure, but it was a while ago.
Now, obviously I was a bit late to the party with that, but I just remember when I heard it, I played it back 2-3 times, and I was just like, yeah, word, this is dope. And then I go down the rabbit hole, and being from South Australia, me personally, I've been a bit late to Sydney rap in general. You know, we had the Hilltop Hoods who popped off in the early 2000s, and whatever wave came through with that and under that was following that more so. So it's interesting to get you in as someone who's been around, you know, the Australian rap scene and the Sydney rap scene for a while. You know, mid-2000s, I reckon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, easy.
And so I want to cover as much of your music career from front to back as we can. But I even want to go back a little bit further and talk about before the music. Now, to my understanding, you're born in '89, West Sydney.
Yep. Now,
what part of West Sydney did you grow up in?
So very, very early years was Penrith. And when I say early, I mean early enough that I only have one memory from there. But then after that, it was Mount Druitt. I spent a couple of years in Mount Druitt, then a few years over Doonside, and then from about maybe 9 or 10 onwards, Layla Park. So that's kind of based in between Seven Hills and Blacktown there.
Yeah, okay. Now, as someone who, has never been, to Mount Druitt, Doonside, etc. From your experiences, what was it like growing up in those areas? All I really know is that they're relatively rough parts of West Sydney.
From what I recall from Mount Druitt and Doonside, or Mount Druitt in particular, I can't really recall much of that. I was only a young pup. But then Doonside, there was there was actually another Indigenous family, Aboriginal family there. So it was okay, you know what I mean? It was good. We knew who we were, they knew who they were, and we clicked, and good times. But then as I moved through to Layla Park, that's when I started experiencing just minor racism.
Okay. And then so at around about what age did you move to Layla Park?
So first and foremost, my family, my grandmother and grandfather were in that house in Layla Park for 60 odd years. So my mum grew up there. I probably would have been about 9 or 10. About 9 or 10. Yeah.
And when you talk about experiencing, racism there when you first moved there, what are some of the sort of things that you experienced at that age?
Just, the monkey, black this, black that. It wasn't very full on, only because, so my family, before I was even born, my family was the only Aboriginal family in that area. So, and my mother was the youngest of 5 girls. Now, they stood up and they punched on with men, grown fucking men, in order for us to not experience so much racism down the track. You know what I mean? They dealt with a fucking lot of it. So they had to fight men. They had no brothers. It was all girls. They had 1 or 2 brothers, but they were in Redfern way. So I didn't experience... It got to me, but it wasn't as full on as what it could have been.
Yeah, right. And then, so when you first got there, were there many other Aboriginal families in Layla Park, or were you one of the few?
No, so when I got there, we were still the only.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and then maybe when I was 13 or 14, another family come, and then a couple of years after that, another family. So now you'll see your random couple of black fellas here and there, but actual family wise and stuff like that, it was started with us, and then maybe two or three after us. You know what I mean? So
And is there more Aboriginal families there now, and do you still live there, or is it different?
to my knowledge, now there are a few more. Not specifically in Layla Park itself, just on the outskirts like Seven Hills and Blacktown, stuff like that. I still have family there. I'm still there every couple of days or whatnot, you know. So
And then, so like when you talk about experiencing a bit of racism when you first got there, over your teenage years, did that progressively ease up, or did it get worse, or?
I'd say it probably stayed around the same, maybe eased up a bit more, only because obviously I was young and I'd react. I'd react, but in saying that, it wasn't always how do I put it? It wasn't always intent. It was more just because other kids around me were uneducated. Like, for example, most people think still to this day, Abo is short for Aboriginal, where it's a racial slur to us, you know what I mean? And it's not so much the kids' fault that they're growing up racist. They just don't know. They haven't been educated, you know what I mean? So it's kind of stayed on the same level, but also dropped down. But when I say dropped down, wasn't so much words, but it was more the looks that I'd get. And you know what I mean? Like, I looked at as an alien, so to speak.
Yeah, right. And then, like, when you talk about, the lack of education being one of the primary reasons why this sort of shit happens, we had a brief chat just off camera where you were explaining to me the difference between the term Indigenous and Aboriginal. I guess, and I found it very interesting because that's something that I always, wondered about. Can you explain again on camera, pretty much what you said to me off camera?
Yep. So most people, when a lot of people can be classified as Indigenous. You yourself can be. Old Bud over here could be, because the meaning of Indigenous is Indigenous to that land. So basically, you were born here, you grew up here, you're Indigenous to that land. That's how some people will interpret it. Also with Aboriginal, again, another European terminology. If you look at normal, the opposite to normal is abnormal, which is not right. This is what we're taught in schools. All kids are taught this in school, you know. So if you look at Aboriginal, that's the opposite of original, when that doesn't fit, because my people are original. We were the first, you know what I mean? So but in saying that also, there are a lot of elders that hang on, even young fellas like me, that hang on to that label of Aboriginal, because it's something that they can stand for. It's, you know what I mean? So everybody is different.
And you mentioned as well that besides those two terms, there was another term that you personally is your term of preference. Can you talk a little bit about that?
When obviously it wasn't always like that. So obviously growing up, I'm Aboriginal, or I'm Indigenous and stuff like that. But once I got connected more with culture and searched for what I think I was looking for, I'll present myself as I'm a Dadik, Wiradjuri, Yuin, Gamilaroi man, and that's 4 separate tribes, from South Coast up to Walgett, and you know what I mean. That's obviously 2 from my father's side and then 2 from my mother's side. So I represent that. That's who I am. That's how I introduce myself now.
Yeah, word. And then when you talk about, experiencing racism as a young kid, and how it sort of changed a bit over time, can you talk about what sort of effects or impacts did that have on you as a young kid? And has that carried through into adulthood or not so much?
So it did affect me. I didn't realise at the time how much it affected me. But as I grew older, that's when I was like, hang on, like this isn't right. You know what I mean? Like, so I did get to a point where I would turn around and I would be that black guy that you think I am, and I'll attack you for it. But now, as an adult, I see same way as dealing with the police. I'm going to beat them at their own game. They're going to expect me to carry on, flip out, do this, do that. No, I'm going to be nice to you, right? But if you're going to be a cunt to me, then I may be a cunt to you. You know what I mean? So sorry about the language, but that's how I am now. You know.
The lesson.
927. Oh, yeah.